Let's introduce the album one more time and go through the slideshow real quick.
I'm going to drop that slide up right now. This is
All
episode
right.
31, album number 70 in our countdown from 100 to number 1. This is the Art Ensemble of Chicago, and it is Fanfare for the Warriors.
All right. So first slide, of course, whatever you do, do it to jazz.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's go to the slideshow now.
Yeah, that's okay.
We got too much else to cover, I think.
Yeah. Let's move on. So
I would suggest.
Next slide. I just downloaded a couple of pictures. We're going to talk about the dress-up characters here in a little bit, but I just found it interesting that their stage presence, it is what it is. So I found a black and white. I found a color picture. Next slide is just a couple more pictures I found of them. It's funny because for as much as I didn't care for them, I did a lot of research this week and really plowed into them. So, yeah, no, stay there.
I'm just making sure you got enough room.
Stay there.
You're good.
So the bottom picture there on that slide, I really like. It's just it's in the same color scheme as the album art. But it's different. So I just picked that picture just because I like it. It got the instruments and it's black, white, and red. It's really cool. Next slide, jazz lingo for the day. So I couldn't pick any other lingo than free jazz. So that's our word for today, free jazz. Now, free jazz is a style of the early and middle 60s involving free playing and a vehement effect. It was originally associated with black culture nationalism. Sometimes two drummers and or two bass players were used. And then I highlighted this sentence. Some free jazz was not very good, and some who played it later denounced it. Ooh. But the style became an ingredient in future styles. So that we're talking about Art Ensemble of Chicago, and they are a free jazz avant-garde group. So jazz lingo for the day, free jazz.
Nice.
I want to touch on what you said, because if you read about free jazz and avant-garde jazz, they're listed as an avant-garde jazz when you look at them on Wikipedia. There's close ties to all of it. It is this, the quote that I read from free jazz. It is as if the musician had learned that entire freedom is not an answer to expression, that the player needs boundaries and basis from which to explore. So that free jazz movement, but the avant-garde free jazz, it was interesting, that the quote on your slide there.
Yeah, for sure. Dad, did you have any input on free jazz lingo of the day?
No, I like the idea, or like what you said about it. It definitely is free. I mean, just freeing, like a liberation, no holds barred. Let's do something. Let's outside the box. The box.
Right. When I think of free jazz, I think almost like free range chickens. They go like crazy. They do their thing. They're not trying to keep in step with anybody else. They're not trying to move as a herd. They don't do anything else. There might be something that startles them, and all of a sudden, boom, they're all together running. But this is perfect, because the more, like you said, the more you studied them, the more you realized, okay, I could appreciate this. And it's funny, but this week of all weeks, I actually studied more in and pushed more in because I appreciated with the art form. And my wife, Scotty, mentioned this. She said, if you could see something, I bet you this would be an expression you could appreciate. And so when you look at the artwork, or their faces, when you look at those kind of things, guarantee, you would sit in a room and go, I appreciate what I'm seeing, but you definitely don't just turn on the album.
Let's take a quick look at what you're talking about, Phil. I'm going to roll a clip.
Well,
in one sense.
That was part of Art Ensemble, their whole deal. Their live shows were the best because you could be in the moment with them, as free as it was, and that was part of their deal. I think that's coming up on the next slide. I think on the next slide, the just the information slide that I always put together. So Art Ensemble started in 1969, and they're actually still presently performing. Not all the members, not all the influential members are the same, but yeah, they're still cutting music. Influences I found were world music and jazz. They have 52 albums in their discography, and the genre is avant-garde and free jazz. All the musicians are multi-instrumentalists. So, the drummer may play congas and bongos and xylophone all at the same time. The sax player may play a sax, a flute. That was kind of freaky because somebody does not want us to talk about Art Ensemble in Chicago because we just had a power outage and we're back. So it's going to take my brain a minute to get refocused. But here we go. We were on the slideshow. I was talking about the multi-instrumentalist. The sax player may play the flute and the clarinet as well. The trumpet player may trumpet, flute, horn, whatever. So they're all multi-instrumentalists. Next thing they're known for is wearing costumes and makeup to represent everyone throughout the universe. So that's you mentioned them dressing up in costume and being at a live show. Yeah, they did that to represent the universe. Stolen Moments was the AIDS awareness album in 1994, the Time Magazine of the Year album.
Wow.
In 1994. Stolen Moments from Art Ensemble of Chicago, not the stolen moments that you're smiling about, Drew, because that discussion is coming up in several weeks and I cannot wait. Now, the website listed on the Wikipedia page is artensembleofchicago.com. I clicked on that link and it does not take you to the artensembleofchicago.com website. It's some random Japanese cartoon.
Somebody bought it.
Somebody bought it, and it's not Art Ensemble of Chicago. So I put that on the slideshow. I had clicked on it before that, but if you could find a link for Art Ensemble, maybe we could change that in the slideshow or put the link in the description. Really cool. 6 degrees this week. Lester Bowie is the trumpet player for Art Ensemble of Chicago. Now, the Stolen Moments album that we just talked about, Red Hot and Cool, the AIDS awareness album in '94, Herbie Hancock played on that album. So Lester Bowie, Herbie Hancock to Miles Davis. I got 1 degree of separation.
Yep.
And you found another one.
And I did. Don Moye. Don Moye was he's the drummer and percussionist on this album, and he played with Kenny Clark, who played with Miles Davis.
Miles Davis, yeah.
So Kenny Clark was a connection. Now, this was the cool part to me is that Don Moye was, in that album, by the way, was Pieces of Time in 1984. Now, I also came across this before I go back to Don. Muhal Richard Abrams played with Jack DeJohnette, who had played with Miles Davis. And that was Made in Chicago in 2013, that album. The reason I brought up Muhal Richard Abrams is he also played with a local Texan by the name of Kenny Durham, who had written the song Blue Bossa. And I keep reading this, when you read about underrated jazz musicians, they show a picture of Kenny Durham as a trumpet player.
Wow.
He was overlooked many, many times. But I want to go back to Don Moye. Don Moye, in his early years, played with the Rochester Crusaders, which was a DCI organization.
That's why. Yeah.
That's why I mentioned that in our earlier conversation about DCI. So
what's DCI for the listeners, Drew?
Drum Corps International. And as of this week, they just wrapped up their 2024 season. And what a great season of music it had been. Drum Corps International, drum and bugle.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's marching band, and
Marching
it's
band.
not jazz. But that's okay. I'll forgive you because it's not jazz. But it is marching bands.
We talked history at the beginning, music influence. Marching band was part of it.
That's
Goes
true.
into it. We're dressing up like crazy with costumes. It fits in there somewhere. We
That's
didn't
true.
paint our faces, but
The art part of avant-garde is also this. It is a display, not only musical, but visual. And I think that was important to talk about is what was a face paint for? And it wasn't just African, but it was universal and cosmic as well, is what they mentioned. For all the worlds that we have not encountered yet, this is their music too.
So let me finish the slideshow, Today in Jazz History. Then we'll play a clip for Art Ensemble of Chicago. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay, so Today in Jazz History. Today is August the 20th. Drummer Mildred Graves was born in 1941. Guitarist Jimmy Rainey was born in 1927. And trombonist Frank Rossellino was born in 1926. Now, I couldn't find a relevant to me in either of those artists. So I just put this just Today in Jazz History.
somebody knows them.
Somebody knows them. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, that's it for the slideshow.